Welcome back. You may be seated. Thank you for being on time. I greatly appreciate that. Your next witness.
Thank you, Judge. People call Lieutenant Bryan Quinn.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Sir.
Lieutenant, would you state your full name and spell your last name for us?
Good afternoon. My name is Bryan Quinn. Last name spelling is Quinn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Lieutenant Quinn, what do you do for a living?
I'm a police lieutenant with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you worked for the Monroe County Sheriff's Office?
25 years.
Did you have any law enforcement jobs before that?
I have.
And where was that?
I served 10 years as a police officer within the state of New Jersey.
Still haven't lost the accent.
I guess not.
What, as a lieutenant in the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, what do you do? What are your specific duties?
Currently, I am the commanding officer of our traffic services unit. And that that traffic unit will serve as the main unit for all serious and fatal traffic crash investigations. During my week, I review anywhere between 60 and 100 crash reports authored by sheriff's deputies within the county. We also do salvage vehicle inspections, regular vehicle inspections, and we do talks throughout the county on traffic enforcement.
Prior to your promotion to lieutenant, what was your position within the Sheriff's Office as it pertains to the Traffic Services Division?
I held the rank of sergeant.
So you were head of the Traffic Services Division.
I was.
Have you received any specialized training in regards to traffic services?
I have.
Lieutenant, I'm going to show you what's been marked People's Exhibit 15. Can you just tell us what that is?
Your Honor, I'd like to look at what he's going to be looking at.
Got a copy right there.
I'd like to verify that it's the same.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Sure. Can you take a look at that for me, Lieutenant, and identify for the court what that is?
This is what we call a CV. Basically, it's a resume of my previous work experience throughout the years working in law enforcement.
And you prepared that document?
I did.
And you provided a copy of it to me at my request?
I did.
And it's a fair and accurate representation of your training and experience in the traffic services accident reconstruction EDR field?
It is.
People would move to admit that as People's 15, a copy of Lieutenant Quinn's curriculum vitae.
People's 15 is admitted.
Judge, I think we also have on our list of stipulations that Lieutenant Quinn is an expert in EDR imaging and analysis.
Say it again. EDR
Imaging
analysis.
and analysis.
Imaging and analysis. Court determines, based on the stipulation, that this witness is an expert in EDR imaging and analysis.
Thank you, Judge. So, if you could explain to us, Lieutenant, what EDR imaging and analysis is.
An EDR is also known as an airbag control module, or basically your vehicle's black box. Your vehicle is pretty much recording, even though it is asleep, everything that you're doing once you get into a motor vehicle, if your vehicle is supported. There was federal law passed in 2014 where every vehicle has to have EDR in vehicles. So when you're operating your motor vehicle, the EDR is activated. For example, if a deer jumps out in front of you and you take an evasive maneuver, you're jolting your vehicle back and forth, your EDR pretty much says to itself, something's going on, we have to start to record. Now it's recording everything that you're doing. If everything smooths out after the fact, the EDR goes back to sleep and it would pretty much overwrite itself. But if there's a significant event, that EDR will lock that event. And if you're involved in a traffic crash with airbag deployment, that event will always be locked and will never leave the system. Me as an analyst, there's a difference between an analyst and a technician. A technician is one who can, number one, determine if your vehicle is supported by EDR, and if it is, the technician will gather all the cables that are needed to hook into a system called Bosch CDR, and the Bosch CDR will take an image. Basically, it's a picture of that event. It's not a report that's generated, it's just a picture that's put on paper. The analyst, the technician can look at the report, and one thing that he will do, even as an analyst myself, we look for keystrokes to verify that the image we're looking at is from the crash that took place.
Okay, so that's kind of what an EDR does. We heard from Deputy Burkhart before. He is a technician, not an analyst.
Correct.
Okay, so you have specialized training above and beyond what Deputy Burkhart has.
I do.
And that is to look at this image and to be able to interpret it.
Correct. One thing I'm going to look for in a crash event is if there's any braking involved. And now this is something that a technician can't do. As an analyst, if there is braking involved and it's documented on the image, there are mathematical formulas that I can use to determine the actual speed of that vehicle when the event occurred. Now, these formulas will only give you up to 5% or 4% above or below what the EDR report is showing.
Okay. Well, let's start with this. What kind of vehicle was the defendant driving on the date of the crash?
A 2017 Ford.
Was that supported by EDR?
It was.
And Deputy Burkhart was able to download an image of that EDR?
He was.
And you've had an opportunity to take a look at that image and review it?
I have.
You mentioned earlier in your testimony, Lieutenant, keystrokes. As it pertains to EDRs, what does that mean?
This is very important. And again, going back to when I first look at the image, for example, if I have a keystroke of 500, it's going to show me the ignition cycle at the time of the image. And if it says 1,000, well, then we're 500 off. I'm going to know that what I'm looking at regarding that image is not from that crash.
So, I guess clarify that for me. So, because in your example, because the EDR image reflects a keystroke, what does a keystroke mean in layman's terms?
Starting your vehicle.
Okay. So because that EDR image in your example is from keystroke 500, and when you download it, you can see that you're now on keystroke 1000, you know that that EDR image is not in time with the current keystroke, because that was 500 ignition cycles ago.
That's correct.
Okay. Does this EDR report reflect those two components in defendant's vehicle?
It does.
And what does it reflect?
The keystroke, I believe, was 8,195 at the crash, and the keystroke upon this image was 8,196. So we're off by one.
So you know, so does a keystroke occur when one removes the EDR?
Anything can trigger a keystroke. A lot of people, if they get back into their car and they keep trying to start the car, every time they try to start the car, it records a keystroke. If your battery becomes dead, or if you disconnect from your battery and then you reconnect, it creates a keystroke. Normally, when we see anywhere between 5 and 10 keystrokes off, to me, that's still the same image pertaining to that crash. But for this crash, we're only off by 1.
And what does that mean?
It's my opinion that the EDR image in this case is from the crash.
Okay. So you mentioned, Lieutenant, that certain things will cause an EDR to wake up or activate. Can you speak a little bit more about that to the jury? What types of things can cause that?
Again, any type of evasive maneuver as to where if you're not traveling in a straight line or negotiating a curve at a basic speed, if you jolt your vehicle, it can cause the EDR to wake up. If you're involved in a car-deer crash, it will cause the EDR to awake. If you're involved in a significant event, it's definitely going to cause the EDR to awake and start to record. But again, if your vehicle has airbag deployment, that EDR image will be there and you can never really remove it.
In that type of circumstance, Lieutenant, would you say the EDR image is locked within the system?
That's correct.
So talk about a little bit for the jury. What types of things does a EDR record?
A lot of information.
Well,
So basically, it can record whether or not you're wearing your seatbelt as the operator. It will record if your passengers are belted. It will record every time you hit your brake pedal. It's going to record percentage of throttle. It will record your speed. It will record what's called a delta V, which is a change in velocity. It will record if your headlights are on or off at the time. It's just a lot of information on the report itself.
so you had an opportunity to analyze the EDR image from this vehicle from this crash, is that correct?
I have.
And did this EDR record an event?
It did.
Did it record more than one?
It did.
How many did it record?
2.
From that same ignition cycle?
Yes.
So referring to, you've had an opportunity to review the report,
I have.
and do you have a copy with you today
I do.
to refresh your recollection?
Yes.
So does the EDR record the speed of a vehicle?
It does.
Does it record the percentage of acceleration? In other words, the percentage of the accelerator pedal?
It does.
Does it record braking?
It does.
Does it record what gear it's in?
It does.
Okay. So you said there were 2 events for this ignition cycle.
Yes.
If I could ask you about the first event, what does the EDR show for that event as far as gear?
It shows reverse.
Okay. Does it show, well, the EDR, does it, how far back does the recording go prior to an event?
Everyone can be different. Usually they're 5 seconds pre-impact.
Okay. Is that in fact what this particular EDR recorded, 5 seconds prior to event?
I believe so, yes.
And for all those types of things we just talked about, braking, accelerator pedal percentage, and speed.
It does.
And it'll tell you the speed right up to the time of the crash?
Yes.
Okay. Lieutenant, could you tell me, as to the first event, what the speed at the time of the crash was?
I would have to look back at the report.
You need it to review or refresh your recollection.
Yes. At the point of impact, it was 13.8 miles per hour,
Okay. And what was the accelerator pedal percentage?
100%.
So, aside from just, I don't want to say just, but aside from analyzing this report, you're familiar with the full scope of this investigation, is that correct?
I am.
And you're familiar with the video evidence and investigation by other deputies, is that right?
I am.
that crash that's recorded by the EDR, can you equate to the jury what real-life event that memorialized?
Looking at the image itself, the operator of the vehicle for the first event had the vehicle in reverse and went into like a U-shaped motion and then crashed into another motor vehicle. But that first crash, there was no airbag deployment, but it created such an event that the EDR recorded it. And then shortly thereafter, there was another event.
Okay. So in the context of all the other information you know about this case, what crash is that EDR event referring to?
The very first EDR image,
Yes, sir.
it's referring to the very first crash, motor vehicle versus motor vehicle.
Okay. And Lieutenant Quinn, I'll refer you to the table for the second event. Do you have that?
I do.
In that event, well, first of all, the EDR recorded it,
It did.
and it recorded back 5 seconds from the time of the crash. Is that right?
That's correct.
And in reviewing the entirety of the EDR image and the investigation, what crash does this reflect?
This image reflects the vehicle striking the building.
Okay. Can you tell at the time of the crash whether or not the braking system was engaged?
Yes.
Was it?
No.
Can you tell at the time of the crash what the accelerator pedal percentage was?
96.6.
What does that mean to you in terms of real life, in terms of what someone's doing in a vehicle?
The pedals to the floor.
And can you tell me, Lieutenant, 5 seconds prior to the crash, what was the vehicle's speed?
29.5 miles per hour.
How about at 4 seconds prior?
30.3 miles per hour.
3 seconds prior?
30.7 miles per hour.
2 seconds prior?
32.9 miles per hour.
1 second prior?
37.8 miles per hour.
And at the time of impact, 0.0 seconds.
44.3 miles per hour.
No further questions, Judge.
Cross?
Sir, does it matter if the vehicle is a two-wheel vehicle or a four-wheel vehicle?
It does not.
And so you're putting that, you weren't there when this crash, of course, occurred, correct?
That's correct.
And you're relying on a mechanical device, correct? You're relying on a device, not a human being, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you're saying it was approximately 40 miles an hour or thereabouts, correct? At the time of impact of the building?
I can only tell you what the 2017 Ford, that airbag module reported as in the image at 44 miles per hour.
And I'm sorry, how fast?
I'm sorry, 44.3 miles per hour.
And would that occur to reach that speed about 400 feet away from that speed you just mentioned in airbag deployment? Would that be, to reach that speed at 450 feet away, you'd have to pretty much put the pedal down to the metal, so to speak. Am I right? In other words, you wouldn't be driving 5 or 10 miles an hour and slowly drive those many seconds for 450 feet. You got the pedal, especially in gravel, to the floor. Would you agree? Or close to the floor?
I would say 50% to the floor.
And I don't have any questions.
Any follow-up? Briefly.
Just on that issue, Lieutenant, just looking at the same graph that's presently, if we could go back to Just looking at the accelerator pedal percentage, going from 5 seconds to 0.0 seconds, is it consistent or consistently rising, or does it fluctuate?
For the second event?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's rising.
Well, so the third part on the second event, on page 27, how does the accelerator pedal percentage start at 5 seconds?
As if she's not pressing on the gas at all.
Okay, and then what does it go to at 4.5 seconds?
59.3%.
And at 4 seconds?
0 again.
And at 3.5 and 3 seconds?
80.1%.
And at 3 seconds?
82%.
And then at 2.5?
0 once again.
And then at 2?
100%.
So it's not consistently held to the floor?
No, it's not.
Okay. No further questions.
Just one question, Your Honor, if I may. Thank you. Would it be consistent with somebody initially putting the pedal to the floor, for lack of a better way of saying it, and then ease up, and then pedal to the floor again? Is that how it looks? Or does it look like somebody put it to the floor and then just eased up and cruised into the building?
No, it's from reading the image itself. And again, at 5%, there's no percentage. So her foot wasn't even really giving it any pressure at all. But as we continue, obviously, you could see by the image that she is pressing on the gas. She releases the gas, and then she gets on it once again. So it's back and forth.
So it's almost like there's a seizure, a relapse of the muscle, and a seizure again of the foot, whether it's intentional or not. Do you agree with that?
Objection. I think that question is highly suggestive.
Well, I'll withdraw it, but
Okay.
I think the jury can.
All right. May this witness be excused.
Yes, Judge.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you, Judge. At this time, the people call Diane Medina.